Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel. I am not in the new house yet. This is my cousin Matthew's room. I am recording this video in the middle of Cozy because it will not get out on time otherwise. So sorry for the constantly changing backgrounds that we have on my channel, but that is gonna stop now soon. Anyways, a bunch of my costume friends and I got together and we were like, you know what, I really want to talk about how I do research on my channel, and I also really want to collab with you guys. So we just collectively decided to do this collaboration where we talk about how we research things, and this is my contribution. I will have a playlist with everyone else's videos linked in the description box below, but for now, let's jump into talking about this. We're going to be talking about researching costume designs for characters that are nothing like yourself. It's really easy to design a character who is similar to you, or who's similar to people that you know really well. But what about designing a character who is absolutely nothing like you, and who's meant to be relatable to a community that you don't really know anything about? How do you do it? Let's walk through an example that I already did. For the last installment of my Winx Club series, where I do crocuses of all of the characters and redesign them how I would have done them for Fate the Winx Saga, I wound up featuring Naboo. Naboo is great, he's a fantastic character, and I struggled with his design more than I have ever struggled with a character design before in my life. But we'll talk about why in a moment. The first step to designing a character's costume is to analyze your source material. In your case, that might be a script. Scripts often come with character descriptions that are really good to work off of. In my case, it was a previously existing cartoon character that I was just, adapting for film. And this in a lot of ways was pretty easy because I could just look at the character and identify the elements that I was seeing. I can see that there are sci-fi and fantasy elements both happening here, as well as some early 2000s prep school influence, and a healthy heaping dose of what I could at the time really only categorize as African fashion. So to start out with, I needed to find some language for what I was actually seeing there. I saw this high-collared, tailored jacket shirt that wasn't quite a jacket and wasn't quite a shirt, and I really wanted to look into that. So I looked up high-collared Mandarin collar shirt African, or some variation of those words, and I found out a bit about both Ankara fashion and senator style, and both of these originate from West Africa, which is a small enough region that I decided to kind of dig into both as much as I could. Let's start with Ankara because I'm glad that I researched it, but I didn't actually wind up using it all that much. Ankara is basically a region in West Africa. Looking up Ankara style does yield a lot of designers and influencers and models and musicians, and that's really what we want to look at, as well as street style options. And when I'm looking through all of these on the ground examples of the fashion and the style, I'm really looking for repeating motifs and ways that the clothing is constructed that are the same throughout all of the pieces. I'm also looking for things that stand out and are different from the rest of them and trying to understand why, as well as looking for musicians or models or designers that remind me specifically of Naboo the character. At this stage, I don't really take notes. I get fully immersed, and if I see something that I really like, I take a note of it or I save it to a Pinterest board. But I'm not really writing down step by step what I did, unfortunately, because that would have been very helpful for making this video. It also varies so much each time that there's really no point in giving you a set list of instructions of oh yes, go to this website and type this thing in, because you'll find it, because it's a journey, it's a process. But now let's talk about senator style, because this is where I really hit the money. Senator style is a fashion from Nigeria, which is also in West Africa, and senator style is defined as an elegant, attractive, and comfortable outfit. It consists of a long top or a shirt that reaches to almost the knees, and pants. This garment is popularized by former Senate President Ayim Pius, hence the name senator style. It's literally dressing like this senator. And this proper tailored style with casually noble vibes worked perfectly for Naboo's character. He's a Boy Scout type, a rule follower, and he also knows when certain rules are beneath him. So I knew that this would work really well for him. Honestly, this style looked so much like the character and the vibes that I see on Andros, so I did a little bit extra research, and I found out Senate President Ayim actually took the presidency in 1999-2000, kind of the in-between, and I think that that timeline actually makes it so that it is possible that the Winx Club designers borrowed this fashion to design this character, and that is kind of mind-boggling to me, just a little bit, but it works. I also spent a lot of time looking for vloggers or fashion bloggers or stores or models or designers who were in this same fashion of senator style, just like I did for Ankara. I also looked for a lot of street style. This is because like a wiki page or a magazine isn't really going to be able to tell you what a fashion is so much. Like, it's a helpful starting point and jumping off point, but like no one is going to look at a magazine and translate what they're seeing directly. There's always going to be a lot of interpretation, and there's a lot of things that are going to affect it. So it's good to look at like the ground floor for these kinds of fashions and find out what real people are wearing. A really good example of this concept is scene fashion, because if you look up scene fashion, you're going to see editorial magazines that look like this, whereas most actual people that wore scene looked like this. That's me, by the way. Anyways, this section of inspiration and research and rabbit trailing takes me hours. And sometimes I have to put a pin in it and come back to it later. That's perfectly normal. Sometimes I will take like 7 hours over the course of like a week and a half. Do whatever works for you at whatever pace is natural, keeping deadlines in mind, obviously. Also, I just want to highlight this for you. I spent probably more than 5 hours doing research on a character that was really only going to be appearing in like a YouTube video for 3 minutes, and I wasn't actually going to be making a costume for. So I think that should kind of give you an idea of how much time and respect should be going into your costume designs. And honestly, when it comes to all of this fashion and this area of the world, I still feel like I barely scratched the surface. Because menswear, let alone Nigerian menswear, is completely foreign to me. But the sci-fi and fantasy elements were really natural. Like, that's my jam. I understand that stuff. It's my bread, it's my butter, I love it. And this is why time investment is going to vary wildly depending on the character that you're researching. Because there are elements that might be really familiar to you that you don't have to spend as much time thinking about in researching, but we'll come back to that. For now, look at this little preview sketch of Naboo, isn't it cute? But let's talk about how I knew what to research real quick. Like I said, I know that menswear and African fashion are both things that I don't really understand, but how did I know what I didn't know? A good starting point is to list what you do know you know. For example, I am a woman. I have only ever really been a woman. And while I had friends in college that were from Nigeria, conveniently, and Senegal and other places in Africa, and I did ask them questions about their fashion and their style and their culture, I still, A, barely scratched the surface, and B, know nothing about the menswear. As a costume designer, it's really important to understand where you're coming from, because then you can address your biases. And everyone has a perspective and everyone has a bias, and understanding that you have those things makes it easier for you to not fall prey to them. For example, I am a Midwestern designer with a background in modesty culture, sneaky native fashion, or casual regalia as you might call it, and alternative fashion. I have spent hours researching J-fashion and getting into the style myself. When it comes to adding gothic elements, I do have to kind of use a little bit of restraint, because I know that what looks normal to me to someone else is going to look very alternative. When designing normal characters, I tend to either make them look weirdly covered or not covered enough. That balance is sometimes hard for me because I had a different upbringing when it came to modesty and what went on your body. So finding that line is something that I had to learn how to do. But if I had never addressed that, then I would still struggle with it to this day. And now that I know where my wheelhouse is and what I'm comfortable with, and I know where to use restraint, I also know that anything that's outside of those bubbles is something I'm gonna need to research and really look into, or possibly get some help with. And be honest with yourself. It's okay if you don't know something. That just means that now you get to have fun researching it. Also, if you think that you know something, try to find a source to confirm it before you make any permanent decisions. Regency, for example, is really prone to misinformation, or reenactorisms, as I've heard them called. For example, chemises were not often wet to then conform to the body better. I don't know why that rumor is so pervasive, but that's not a thing. Now, once I have a character to look at, I make a list, a bulleted list of all of their identity traits and everything that should influence the way that they dress, the clothing they select, and the way that they want to be perceived. Anything I don't share with them, basically, I'm going to assume I need help on or need to do some research with. If I had a character with a prosthetic or a mobility aid that I'd never used, I would need to look into how people adapt their clothing and their wardrobe to accommodate those sort of things. Or if I had a character with an ethnicity or nationality that I'm not familiar with, obviously I'm gonna need to really deep dive into the culture and make sure that I understand it. Religions are also very important. If you are given a Muslim woman character to outfit, well, I would definitely need to look into headscarves, because all I know is the one that shows your face is called a hijab, and that they use like pins and a headband to keep it in place. And other than that, I'm in way over my head. Of course, considering the era and the cultural context of the time is really important. Not just because of the styles that were available or the historic accuracy of, you know, the details of the costume, but political and cultural climate intersect with different parts of a character's identity. For example, if you took an LGBTQIA character and you had a story that was exactly the same, but you had it in two different eras, right? Where this same character in the same story was either in the 1960s or the 1860s, you would have very, very, very different levels of expression. Because whereas in the 1960s there was a little bit of a boom for LGBT acceptance and they might have been able to represent themselves a little bit more, the Victorians were a little bit known for being prudish. And while there were very sneaky coded systems that the gays used to communicate, they were subtle. There are any number of examples I could get into to talk about that, but I feel like that one's a good one. I feel like it's a good concept grinder. That doesn't make sense. Circling back to what we're here for, one thing that you're also really going to want to do whenever you're researching a culture outside of your own is familiarize yourself with the pitfalls and the cliches. For example, edgy East Asian with colored streak in hair is a character that just seems to come with every sci-fi adventure or fantasy. I don't know why this trope is so pervasive, but I will link a whole video that I find super fascinating that talks about it, because like, this is so specific and it's everywhere. If you want to do a trope, basically ask yourself why. Figure out if it serves the story. Make sure that you're not contributing to any kind of negative stereotypes that are already rampant. Like, you know, the sheer amount of hypersexualization that Asian women face all the time. That's a good one to not contribute to. To put it in other words, you don't want to design a costume that is going to distract from the story or harm the community that you are trying to represent and give a voice to. So you might have to check or run your designs by someone who knows a lot more than you do. For example, someone who's actually a part of the community that you're trying to represent. But Googling negative stereotypes about X community or X community's media tropes will probably yield you some discussions about these tropes that people are tired of seeing. And that can range from anything as serious as, like I said, hypersexualization in Asian women, or it could just be that plus-size women are absolutely sick and tired of seeing characters that are dressed in mom cardigans, turtlenecks, and all the way to the floor skirts. Let them wear normal clothes. Just let them express themselves, let them breathe, let them wear a crop top, let them wear a spaghetti strap. Yeah. I'm gonna stop. If you're far enough into production, and depending on how your schedule works where it comes to the casting and then the costume design, you might be able to ask the actual actor who's going to be wearing the costume how they feel about it. Especially if the actor shares a community with the character, which is pretty likely. So you might be able to reach out and be like, hey, this is the design. Does this look like something that, you know, someone in this situation would wear? Does this make sense to you, you know, from the perspective of your character? Does this make sense to you from your perspective, knowing what you know as, for example, a black woman or a gay person, or a person with a prosthetic? And they should be able to give you some good feedback. Make sure that the actor does know that you are asking for feedback though, and that you actually want them to tell you what's going on, because otherwise they might just say something like really polite, like, yeah, that looks great, I love it. So make sure they know that this is a collaborative question. Reaching out to fashion influencers or bloggers through DM is also a really good option if you find someone that shares a community or who is a member of a community that you're designing an outfit for. You can just reach out to them. I've done it before. People are usually pretty receptive to people taking an interest in their work. Just make sure that you are A, not expecting free labor from them, B, be sure to support like what they're doing a little bit. If it's an Instagram account, be sure to like some things, share some things, you know, maybe follow them. If it's a YouTube account, you know, give them some watch hours. It's not gonna hurt anything, cost you nothing. And if you're going to then, you know, do a consultation with them basically, because asking someone a question about something that's gonna directly benefit your production, that is a consultation, and it is reasonable to, you know, throw some money their way if the budget allows for it and you have the ability to do that. I've reached out to people in the past and I have received information from people that way, and I've also had people ask me questions in the past. It's nice. By nature, most makers and most fashion enthusiasts are pretty collaborative, but don't expect anything from anyone. It's just an option that you have available. Be respectful, take no for an answer. That's basically what I wanted to say. If you're going to be outfitting a character with pre-made garments, it also can be helpful to find a store that is run by someone who shares an identity with that character that you're particularly struggling with or that is different from yourself. For example, if I were outfitting a black character, I might find a ready-to-wear brand that's run by black designers. You could talk to them about, hey, how would you style this character? If this character were to come to your store and buy something, what would you suggest to them? And then that business is getting a paycheck and a little bit of advertisement. They can actually, like, you know, tell customers, oh yeah, that shirt was on TV, and that's kind of fun. Honestly, with Google, access to the library, and a whole lot of determination, you can come out the other end with a great design. Thank you for stopping by, and do remember to hit that like button if you like this video so that more awesome people like you can see it. You are officially welcome to hit the subscribe button and stick around for the next one. Can't wait to see you again. Thank you for watching this far into the video. It really, really does help the channel whenever people engage and watch and do all of that stuff. And if you are absolutely hell-bent on supporting my channel, there is a Ko-fi link in the description box below, and I currently have a goal of raising $400, and that will fully fund my channel, meaning all of my programs, all of my fabric, all of the other little odds and ends here and there that go into making patterns and making sewing videos for you guys. That $400 will fund me from when I started about a year ago, all the way until February. So I'd say I've budgeted pretty well, but once that goal is reached, I'm gonna release 2 free sewing patterns that are pretty fun, if I do say so myself. So yeah, that's all I got, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, friends!